Paris. At first it looked as if things were returning to normal. The capital and many other centres in France were on the move. But so too were students and other left-wing demonstrators who weren't content to let the fight for their cause, whatever it is, just peter out. Quickly the situation reverted to ugly street warfare, with riot police giving no quarter and getting none in return.
Right, my name is Alan Chamberlain, and I was born on the 22nd of July 1941.
Born in Quandialla Hospital, a small town hospital in rural New South Wales, Dad was raised on a sheep farm just outside of Wagga Wagga. The animals were his best friends, and he didn't enjoy going to school much, as he preferred to stay at home and read anything and everything he could find. It was customary at the time for farmers to send their sons to Albury Grammar, where most of the students were expected to eventually return to their family farms and one day take over. My dad, on the other hand, had other plans. Despite having to repeat fifth form in high school, he received a Commonwealth scholarship to attend St Andrew's College at the University of Sydney. Uncertain of what he wanted to study, he completed a Bachelor of Arts followed by a Diploma of Education to teach high school students. His time at Sydney University is described as rather peaceful, with the occasional student protest against atrocities happening overseas, such as the 1960 Sharpeville massacre. After a couple of years teaching in Sydney and then in Wagga Wagga, he jumped at the opportunity to be a tutor for English at La Sorbonne University in Paris in 1966. He took a month-long boat trip to London, where he stopped at 10 different countries along the way, finally settling in Paris, and was given food and accommodation on the university campus along with a small wage. He even decided to enrol at La Sorbonne to complete his PhD at the time. Little did Dad realise he had stepped right in the middle of what was about to become a significant event in French history. At the time, President Charles de Gaulle was in power, and France was described as being under a repressive capitalist regime. Students were becoming increasingly vocal about the restrictive traditionalist administrations of the country's universities, and as they were known to do, they held very impassioned protests, which were met with forceful confrontation from the university's administration and police. Dad, meanwhile, was both a lecturer and student at this stage, but he made sure his allegiances were made clear by protesting with his fellow students and striking. Unfortunately for the government, France had some 11 million repressed working class who also felt they were being taken advantage of by the capitalist practices, and they decided to join forces with the students, also going on strike and marching in protest. On the 9th of May 1968, the clashes with police escalated to what was almost to become a civil war. Protesters pelted the police with any projectiles they could find, and the police retaliated with tear gas.
Tear gas, you got a thing called chloracne, because the tear gas had chlorine in it, and you got spots on your face.
Paris was brought to a standstill. It looked like a war zone with burnt-out buildings and cars strewn through the streets. Students had barricaded off the streets and the universities. Dad was left residing there with no money and having to ask friends to bring in food. On the brink of civil war, by the end of May, de Gaulle agreed to dissolve the National Assembly and hold an election in June. Feeling that their demands had been met, the students and workers gradually returned control of the city over to the police and the universities back to their administration. Dad returned to lecturing and completed his PhD. Absurdly, de Gaulle was re-elected that June. Dad says that there were whispers that this had been a power play from the Russian government at the time, but that is another story altogether.